The call came in at 3:11 a.m. from a number that did not exist, and when Jolene Bricker answered it the way she had answered 10,000 calls before, Whitfield County 911, what is the address of your emergency? The voice on the other end said her name. Not her operator name, not dispatch, not ma'am. Her first name, Jolene. Spoken once, clearly, by a male voice she did not recognize, and then the line went dead with a soft electronic click that sounded almost intentional, as if the caller had not lost the connection but chosen to end it. For a moment, she simply stared at the blinking call-ended indicator, her headset still pressed to one ear, waiting for the line to reconnect, waiting for the voice to come back and explain itself, to reveal itself as a glitch, a misdial, a coworker playing a bad joke. It did not. She sat in the blue glow of 3 monitors inside the dispatch center on the second floor of the Whitfield County Emergency Services Building in Dalton, Georgia, a squat brick structure on Thornton Avenue that housed the 911 Operations Center, a records office, and a small administrative wing that had been locked and emptied since the budget cuts in November. The building was staffed overnight by 2 people. Jolene, who worked the phones and coordinated dispatch for fire, EMS, and law enforcement, and a shift supervisor named Ray Tutt, who should have been in the glass-walled office at the back of the floor, but had walked downstairs to the vending machines 15 minutes ago and had not returned. She tried to shake it off. Phantom calls happened, misdials, spoofed numbers from robocall networks that bled through the filters. In 4 years on the night desk, she had heard every kind of dead air the system could produce. But none of those calls, not one, not ever, had spoken her name. She pulled up the call log on her screen. The originating number was a 7-digit string matching no valid format, no area code, no carrier prefix. The system flagged it as unresolvable. She clicked through to the location data, which on a normal 911 call would return GPS coordinates or a cell tower ping, and found something that made the air leave her lungs. The call had been routed through the building's own internal phone system, from inside. Specifically, from Extension 2 in the administrative wing on the first floor, the wing that had been locked, cleared, and disconnected from the phone network for 3 months. Jolene pulled her headset down and looked across the dispatch floor. The room was wide, lit by the cold wash of monitors and the green glow of exit signs above the stairwell doors. 6 workstations faced a wall display showing county maps and active unit positions. 5 were dark. Only hers was lit, a single island of blue light in a room full of empty chairs and dark screens, humming softly in the way that electronics do when they are the only living sound in a space designed for many voices. She keyed her radio and called Ray. No answer. She waited 10 seconds and tried again. Nothing. Ray always carried his radio. 20 years in fire rescue had made it instinct. He answered on the first or second call without exception. The silence that came back through the channel settled into her stomach like a stone dropped into still water, sending slow circles of unease outward through her body. She walked to his office. Light off. Jacket on the chair. Thermos on the desk, still warm. Reading glasses beside the keyboard. Everything about the small, glass-walled room said he had stepped out for a moment and fully intended to return. But 15 minutes was not briefly for Ray. She returned to her station and assessed. The building had 3 floors, dispatch on the second, the lobby and administrative wing on the first, and a basement with mechanical systems and an old records archive. The main entrance was secured by a keycard reader that logged every swipe. She pulled up the log. Last entry, hers at 10:47 p.m., Ray's at 10:32 p.m. Nothing since. The rear fire exit and basement door were alarmed. Any opening would trigger a console alert. No alert had come. The building was sealed. No one had entered. No one had left. And yet, someone inside this sealed building had used a disconnected telephone on a locked floor to call her direct 911 line and say her first name, as if they were close enough to read it off her badge. The fear arrived the way it always does when your job teaches you what real emergencies sound like, not as panic, but as a slow, clinical tightening of focus. She had talked people through house fires, guided strangers through CPR on their own family members, stayed on the line during violent domestic calls where she could hear the impact through the phone. She knew fear. She knew how to keep her hands moving and her voice level while her body screamed at her to run. She picked up her desk phone and dialed the Dalton Police Department's direct line. Sergeant Hicks answered on the second ring. She kept her voice even. Anomalous call routed internally from a deactivated extension in the closed wing. Supervisor unresponsive, requesting a welfare check on the building. Hicks sent a unit. 7 minutes. She turned back to her screens. The county was quiet. No incidents, no pending dispatches. The silence should have been relief. Instead, it felt loaded and aware of itself. The kind of silence that knows it is about to end and is savoring the last of its own stillness. At 3:19 a.m., the internal line rang again. Same extension, same number. Jolene stared at the blinking indicator for 3 seconds, then answered. She said nothing. She opened the line and listened. Breathing. Slow, measured, unhurried. Not the gasping of distress, but the deliberate rhythm of someone standing still in a quiet room, wanting her to know they were there. 10 seconds. 15. Then the voice, same male, low and flat and stripped of any accent, said 4 words. Come down and look. The line cut. Her hands were steady removing the headset, but her forearms had gone cold and she could feel her pulse in her temples with a clarity that made every second feel countable. She did not go downstairs. She was not walking into a dark, locked wing where someone who knew her name was calling from dead equipment. That was not fear, that was operational discipline, the principles she repeated to callers every night. Do not approach the threat. Stay where you are. Help is coming. She tried Ray's radio once more. Dead air. She pulled up the building's security cameras, 4 feeds, all outdated, low resolution black and white. Camera 1, first floor lobby, front entrance, reception desk, hallway toward the administrative wing, empty. Camera 2, rear lot. Her sedan and Ray's pickup truck sitting beneath the amber glow of sodium vapor lamps, casting shadows across the asphalt. No movement anywhere. Camera 3, the corridor outside the administrative wing. Grainy, dark, but the double doors at the far end were visible, closed. Camera 4 covered the basement stairwell, and its feed was black. The camera had been offline for weeks due to a hardware failure that existed only as an unprocessed line on a maintenance request. She fixed on camera 3 with the unblinking attention of someone who believes they saw something move but cannot yet prove it to themselves. The hallway was still. One overhead fluorescent near the camera cast a weak yellow cone that faded into darkness halfway down. Then, the double doors opened, one side only, slowly swinging inward as if pushed by a hand just outside the camera's angle. The door traveled to 45 degrees and stopped. Beyond it was absolute blackness. The administrative wing had no lighting, no windows facing the corridor, nothing to reveal what lay behind that open door. It simply opened, held its angle with a stillness that suggested something mechanical or something patient, and waited. Jolene watched for a full 60 seconds. No one emerged. No figure appeared. The door stayed exactly where it was, framing a rectangle of pure dark. Then, at the edge of the camera's resolution, in the thin strip of shadow between the door and the frame, something shifted. Not a full figure, not a clear shape, just a change in the density of the darkness, a vertical form that might have been a person standing just inside the doorway, or might have been nothing, a compression artifact in the ancient feed. Jolene could not tell, and she had been trained, by 4 years of late nights in this room, by thousands of calls from people who needed her to think clearly when they could not, to distrust what she could not verify. And that uncertainty was worse than either answer, because it handed the image to her imagination, and 4 years of listening to people describe the worst moments of their lives had given her imagination a vocabulary she could not shut off. Headlights swept the lobby on camera 1 at 3:27 a.m. She buzzed the officers in remotely and watched them enter, flashlights up, moving with practiced calm. She stayed on the desk phone, guiding them step by step down the corridor toward the administrative wing, her voice steady even as her eyes tracked their flashlight beams on the camera feed. On camera 3, their flashlight beams reached the double doors. Both doors were closed, shut tight, locked, as if they had never opened. The officers used a master key, entered the wing, and cleared every room. 6 offices, a conference room, 2 closets, a restroom. All empty, all dark. Except in the 3rd office on the left, a desk phone sat on the floor in the center of the room. Not on the desk, on the carpet. Positioned with deliberate symmetry, receiver off the hook, cord plugged into a wall jack certified as deactivated in November. They found Ray in the basement. He was on the floor of the records archive, back against a filing cabinet, conscious but disoriented. He told them he had gone downstairs after hearing what sounded like a heavy door being pulled shut somewhere near the vending area, and the stairwell door had closed and locked behind him. His radio had no signal through the concrete. He had been sitting in the dark for roughly 20 minutes, unable to call for help, listening to the silence of the basement and wondering why the door would not open. The officers checked the door. The thumb-turn deadbolt on the corridor side had been engaged manually, turned from outside after Ray walked through. Someone had locked him in. They swept the basement, empty, rechecked every floor, every room, every access point. The alarmed exits had not been triggered. The keycard logs showed no entries. Whoever was inside left no fingerprints, no DNA, no identifiable footage, and no trace of how they entered or left a building that every system showed as sealed. The incident report was filed with the Dalton Police Department as a suspicious event, category unspecified. No suspects were ever identified, no evidence linked to any known individual. The extension was tested the next morning and confirmed inactive, physically unable to make calls. The technician's report had a handwritten note at the bottom, no explanation for logged calls. Jolene requested a transfer to day shift. It was granted within the week. She still works Whitfield County Dispatch. She still answers the phone, still guides people through the worst minutes of their lives with a voice so calm it sounds like it belongs to someone who has never been afraid. But she has never again worked past midnight, and on quiet nights when the queue empties and the building settles into that particular silence only government offices produce after dark, she catches herself listening, not for the chime of an incoming call, but for the sound of her own name spoken, once, clearly, by someone who should never have known it.